These are the notes for section 2.7. Nearing the end of chapter 2 here, but it starts getting difficult now today. You're going to be doing some more solving. So again, we're going to be solving, but we're going to be solving by factoring. So let's do a little review here just before we start. First of all right, let's see what we've got here. We are working with what we call quadratic equations. And they look like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals something. Usually 0, but I'm just going to write equal. I'll write equal 0. It doesn't really matter. And what we did for our first section of solving is we said, well, let's have b be 0. Because if there is no x term in there, we can just do a direct algebra attack. So if it said 2x squared, that indicates we've got a quadratic equation. And if I said minus 18 equals 0, I don't need anything fancy to solve this. I can just go ahead and use inverse operations. When you have both of these, the x squared and the x term, they don't go together. X squared plus x, those are not like terms, so we can't put them together and we can't attack x. So what we need to do is come up with other methods. But when that b term's missing, we just do what's called solving by square roots. We just go ahead and try to isolate this term so that we can take a root. So we get the 18 over to the other side by doing its inverse operation. It was a minus 18, so I added it. Now for me to get this x squared term all by itself, I need to get that 2 out of there, and it's multiplication by 2, so I divide. And I get what x squared is equal to 9. Now I can take the square root of both sides, and I get x is equal to, and this is where I had to be careful with these, because when I solve by square roots, it's really easy to miss one of the two answers, because you have to remember to put that plus or minus in. Let me show you why it's important. Okay, so what you're doing is you're telling me what x can be, so that when you square it, double it, and subtract 18, you get a 0. Well, let's do that. Let's take negative 3. Let's square it. We'll get a 9. Let's double it. We'll get an 18. Let's subtract 18. And you'll notice we do get a 0. So negative 3 is just as good of an answer right here as positive 3 would have been. Positive 3 works also, though, because 3 squared is 9. Double it, you get 18. Subtract 18, you get 0. So we have two viable answers by using solving by square roots. Then what I'd like you to do is draw a bar. After we got done solving by square roots, we did what's called solving by using the zero product property, which says if it's already in factored form, it's easy to find the solutions. Because if stuff multiplies to equal 0, something's got to be equal to 0. So either 2x minus 1 has to give you a 0, or x plus 5 has to give you a 0. And all you do is solve those two equations separately. This one over here, super easy to figure out that x needs to be a negative 5. That would do it. If x is a negative 5, I'd get negative 11, because I'd have 2 times negative 5 down 1. But then the minute I put it in here, I'm going to wipe that out, because I'll be saying times 0. Now, the other thing x could be, it would be if I add 1, divide by 2, and x could be a half. Because if it were, I'd be doing 2 times a half, which is 1, minus 1 is 0, and then it doesn't even matter what happens after that, because when you multiply and there's a 0 involved, at least one thing has to be equal to 0. So now in your notes, I want you to write new. Now what we're going to do is combine a couple things. We are going to have what's called a quadratic equation. It's going to have what we call a b term or an x term. So it cannot be solved by square roots. And it's not factored. So this is a new problem for us, because how do I figure out what will give me a 0? Well, we are going to be doing what's called solving by factoring. And let's go over to this column. In order to solve by factoring, the first thing you have to make sure is that the equation is equal to 0, which this is, so I don't have to worry. But if it's not, I have to make sure that I get it equal to 0. And that will be covered more tomorrow. Today, this is they'll all be equal to 0. Number 2, I'm going to factor. If it says solve by factoring, it will factor. So number 2, I'm going to go over here and say, all right, great. I don't have to do that long process because this is just x times x. That's all I got to worry about. What multiplies to equal 15 that I can get 8 out of? And 5 and 3 should pop into your head. This is all positives, so we will have 2 positive factors. And now what I've got is the equation in what we call factored form. So now I use that zero product property, which says I set each factor equal to 0, and I solve. So if these two pieces multiply to equal 0, what I know is either x plus 3 is equal to 0 or x plus 5 is equal to 0. And this kind you can do in your head because it's a strict opposites, but x would equal negative 3 because negative 3 plus 3 is 0, or x would equal, or x could equal negative 5. Now watch me check this. I'm not going to check them all because they're kind of a pain, but I just want you to see how you did truly find the solutions. Because let's go back to the original. If these are really my solutions, let's go right check. Then, when I do x squared plus 8 times x plus 15, I better get a 0. Let's just go check one of these. Let's check the negative 3. X squared plus 8 times x plus 15. Let's see what we get. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. And then I've got that 15 there who doesn't have a variable attached. When I add this up, I get 9 down 24, which is at negative 15, up 15, and lo and behold, it poops out a 0. So I know that is indeed a solution. And if I had plugged negative 5 in here, it also have given me a 0. So when we're solving by factoring, we factor and then set each piece equal to 0. So let's go try another one. Let's do example number 1, which will just be x squared, and we're going to keep them kind of easy today, minus 10x minus 24 is equal to 0. And so for today's, you're only going to have a short worksheet, and we're going to keep it nice in that they'll all be equal to 0 today, and they're going to factor pretty nicely and smoothly. So first thing I need is to have it equal to 0, check. Next thing I need to do is factor. So let's go figure out what multiplies. Again, we're not going to have hard factoring today. This is nice and easy. Leads have to be x and x. Your gut instinct might be on this one to use 6 and 4, but keep in mind you need to multiply to equal a negative. And if you want to add up to negative 10, you'd have to have both of these be negative, in which case they multiply to equal positive. You'd have a big sign issue going with this. So I'm going to tell you that's not the correct pair. 3 and 8, there's no way to get a 10 out of. 12 and 2, there it is. Keep in mind I need a negative 10, so I want to make sure negatives win out, so I want more negatives. And I have factored it. Now I need to see what makes each factor equal to 0. Well, what makes this factor equal to 0? And the answer is 12. What makes this factor equal to 0? And the answer is negative 2. So I have 2 solutions to that quadratic equation. All right, last one up, but I'm going to have you star this one because on the test first semester for this chapter, this was one of the most missed questions. And there's going to be some like this on your worksheet. Number 7, number 8, and number 9 on your worksheet. I'm going to be checking in detail, and you're going to look at these notes when you're doing them. So have your notes out and look at these. I'm just going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to call this x squared plus 8x is equal to 0. When I solve this by factoring, I look over here and I say, is it equal to 0? And the answer is yes. Tomorrow that answer is going to be no, or on the next set of notes. The next thing I need to do is factor, and this is where you might get stuck because you're going to sit there trying to unfoil it, and you're going to go, but there's no last term. How can I figure out what adds up to 8 when there's nothing over there? And the answer is it's not that kind of factoring. This is that common monomial factoring when I only see 2 terms here, but they both have an x in them. So I can pull out an x and factor it like this. If you notice, if I hop this back in, I get x squared plus 8x. Now I just see what makes each factor equal to 0. And here's my 2 factors. Either x would have to equal 0 or x plus 8 would have to equal 0. This is one solution. By the way, let's go check it. 0 squared plus 8 times 0 does give me 0. I'll get 0 plus 0 is 0. My other solution would be what I get when I subtract 8 from both sides over here. And I'd get x equals negative 8. By the way, let's go check that one too. I just like you to see the checks on this. I don't require you to do them all, but let's go throw a negative 8 in here. Negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. When I put it over here, I'm going to get 8 times negative 8, which is negative 64. And you'll notice that does give you a 0. A lot of writing going on in here. My notes look kind of messy. I'll try to neaten them up. So I'm going to have you try this one on your own. So pause the video, or I'll maybe just give enough time for you to run through it. I don't remember what example I'm on, but let's go try this one. If I'm trying to solve this by factoring, I know I need to be able to factor this right-hand side. Is it the unfoiling kind where I'm trying to break it into 2 pieces? And the answer is no, because there's no last term over here for me to work with. There's no c. No c. What do I do? Well, you look at it, you notice there's an x in each term, and you yank it out. And once you do that, the answers fall into your lap. Because in order for those 2 things to multiply to equal 0, either x is 0 or x minus 10 is equal to 0. And it gives me 2 solutions, 0 or 10. All right, so you are ready for the next worksheet. It's kind of a nude color, or I guess you'd call it. It's worksheet 2.7a. It's number 7, and it's kind of a nude color. So you're looking for worksheet number 7, and that's a short one as well. But the next one's going to kind of bite you in the butt a little bit. It's a little bit more difficult, but we're done for the day. Peace out.